So welcome you to all. Welcome Principal Madam, School of Pharmacy, Dr. Lalit Lata Jha. Welcome to the Mr. B.J. Acharya and faculty member and students. Uh, Today our webinar series on the overview of nanoparticle as a novel drug delivery system, and our resource person is Dr. Sania Shah. They are delivering in as an expert talk for the nanoparticle. Uh, Let me give you some introduction of the sir. Sir has serving as an assistant professor at BK Modi Government Pharmacy College, and sir has joined BK Modi Government Pharmacy College in January 2009, and is serving there since then. Sir has done his master's M.Pharm Pharmaceutical Technology and Biopharmaceutics from Nirma University, Ahmedabad, and the PhD done from Saurashtra University, Rajkot. His PhD thesis was shortlisted for Best PhD Thesis across India by Pharma Innovative Thesis Award under the aegis of Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Sir has also guided 23 M.Pharm student and 2 PhD student are under his guiding. Uh, Sir has also received around 6 lakhs of research and development grant from the various bodies, and also Sir has published more than 20 publication in international peer-reviewed journal and present as his research work also, such as drug development and digital pharmacy, SRC advances, F Pharma Scientech, Journal of Inclusion Phenomena and Macroclitic Chemistry, Journal of Pharmaceutical Investigation, also current drug delivery and pharmaceutical development and technology. Sir hold the expertise in formulation development of small molecule and the design of experiments and the statistical analysis. So, sir, we are School of Pharmacy welcomes you and invite you to present your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Raviraj, for a very generous introduction and a kind introduction. A very good morning to all of you, especially the Principal Dr. Lalit Jha, the coordinator of today's session, Mr. Raviraj, and all those who have joined in this webinar. I would thank the management and principal for inviting me for this webinar, as well as I'm sure I'm audible to all of you. I just started it.
Yes, sir, you are clearly audible.
That's fine. And I'm thankful to the management and principal for inviting me for this webinar and allowing me to share my views on this system. So without, I also welcome all the students who have joined through various online platforms, and we should now start the webinar. If you could just tell me, is the PowerPoint slides visible? It would be great. Is it visible?
Yes, sir, visible, sir.
Chalo, great. Fine. So, welcome to all the students. Today, as the coordinator told us that webinar is on overview of nanoparticles and drug delivery systems. So, what we are going to do is, we would first see a brief introduction on what is a drug delivery system. Then we would be seeing what are the basic advantages for nanoparticles. Then we would be shifting towards two different dosage forms. One is nanocrystals. We would be discussing nanocrystals and polymeric nanoparticles, and then we would be also discussing liposomes. And both of these we are going to discuss the intricacies of dosage forms, their formulation systems, the various characterization parameters, and we are also going to discuss the marketed formulations. And then we would conclude. Then I would, at the end of this, we would conclude with some of the references which I have referred, the bibliography which I have referred. We have to prepare this presentation. One more thing. I am not sure with what platform the students may be able to ask questions, but I would request students to ask whatever question they wish during the presentation or after the presentation. You are always welcome to ask any type of question you wish to ask. You are free to ask. But before starting all of these things, we would first start with a simple slide. These are some of the products that are available in some of the developed countries. These are not just theoretical products, they are available in the market. Nano toothbrush, nano towels, nano first aid kit, nano fresh, even nano babies. And one of the marketed product is nano water. And if you could just read the the description, it says it is the most nutritious way, completely natural environmental cleansing. The purpose why this slide has been kept here, the slide is from one of the presentation by Keenam Park. Professor Keenam Park is a well-known professor in the field of nanopharmaceuticals, in the field of nanoparticles, and during one of his lecture, I came across this slide, and the idea for keeping this slide is that nanotechnology, it's not just in pharmacy or not just in medicine as a general, but is applicable in other fields as well. And it is able to solve some of the critical problems where we are not able to solve it by conventional methods. But we are not getting into details of all these things. We would be getting into details of nanomedicine, specifically nanomedicine. As the title of the topic says, it's overview of nanoparticles and drug delivery systems. So before starting, I expect the students of BPharm level who are listening to this, that we should be very well aware that what is a drug delivery system. As one of the renowned scientists from ICT, Mumbai, during one of his lectures, he told that when drugs are prepared, they are prepared keeping the disease in mind. When drugs are prepared, they are prepared keeping the disease in mind. But when dosage forms are prepared, when drug delivery systems are prepared, they are prepared keeping the patient in mind. So it is essential that whenever we are preparing the drug delivery system, it is essential that whenever we are preparing the drug delivery system, that has to be prepared, that has to be prepared in such a way that it should have maximum patient compliance. It should have maximum patient compliance. So just to pinpoint that patient compliance, to pinpoint the role of drug delivery system, apart from the drug, the role of drug delivery systems, I have taken two examples. One is of immediate release dosage forms and one is of modified release dosage forms. The faculty should be aware with these terms. If the students are listening, or if the students are there, especially BPharm students, then immediate release dosage forms are those dosage forms in which we are not controlling the release of the drug from the dosage form. As soon as the dosage form comes inside the body, it is going to release the drug. That is immediate release dosage form. In modified release dosage form, we are modifying the release of dosage form tailor-made for our requirement. One of the examples cited in the book, cited by US FDA. US FDA has given a guidance document to how to apply a quality by design principle in designing immediate release dosage form. So one thing which I would like to discuss is before we would start to nanoparticles, we would be discussing just for 5-10 minutes that what is the importance of drug delivery system, and therefore just for 5 minutes or so we are going to discuss this drug delivery systems. That whenever we are preparing drug delivery system, this drug delivery system, they are prepared keeping the mind what pharmacological profile of the drug is required in the body. Just for simple example, you would have seen so many dosage forms inside in the market. However, all these dosage forms, they are not going to release the drug in the similar manner. A very well-known example is of omeprazole. That omeprazole granules, whenever they are given to patients, they are entry-coated. Why they are entry-coated? Because it is not stable in stomach, and so on. So whenever we are preparing the dosage form, we need to keep in mind that what pharmacological profile is required inside the body. For example, in this, if I could just scribble it. For example, here we can see that the pharmacological profile which we require inside the body is that within 2 hours it should have maximum concentration, and it should start releasing the drug. The drug should be seen in the blood or the plasma concentration as soon as the dosage form is inside the body, and therefore we need to prepare an immediate release dosage form. So if we want to have such biological profile of the drug, such pharmacological profile of the drug, then what is the dosage form we have to prepare? The dosage form which we have to prepare should be immediate release. It should be able to dissolve almost all the drug within the first 45 minutes after its administration into the body. So this has nothing to do with nanoparticles, but this is how a drug delivery system would work. Many a times, whenever we would initiate a project work, especially at BPharm semester 8 or in master's level, we start with the mind that we are going to prepare a control release formulation or immediate release formulation, etc., etc. However, what we should do is the better logic is we should first find out how much concentration of the drug is required in the body, and based on that we are going to prepare a formulation. So this is an immediate release formulation which we would come across normally. Further, just present it in a more in a clear way. Let us assume we are preparing a control release formulation. This example I have specifically taken to show what is patient compliance. Everybody of us know that it has been well established, well researched, well written that there are some patients who come across heart attacks in morning. There is a sudden surge in blood pressure in the morning. For medical reasons we are not discussing here because it will be beyond the scope, but it has been well documented as well that there is sudden surge in blood pressure in the morning, and therefore there are higher chances that the person would have a heart attack in the morning. Now, if we are able to give the medicine in the morning itself, if we are able to, for example, between 4 to 6 or 4 to 7, there is a surge in blood pressure. If we are able to give the medicine in that time, then there are chances that the patient might not suffer a heart attack. So what we could do then? We could prepare a formulation, immediate release formulation, which the patient has to take every morning at 4 o'clock. I do not think that it has to be discussed that this is not patient compliance. It is not patient compliant. Some of the medicines, such as for diabetes, for hypertension, for cholesterol, they remain with the patient for a very long time. According to one research, approximately a person who suffers from hypertension, approximately he takes 80,000 pills in his lifetime. So these are some of the disorders in the body which has to be treated chronically. So every time if you expect the patient would get up in the morning at 4 o'clock to take this medicine, it's not patient compliant. Or what we could do is we could prepare a control release formulation. This control release formulation would delay the drug release and would release the drug when it is required. So if we would expect a pharmacological profile for such drug, then it would be like this. First 4-5 hours there is no drug release. That is the patient when the patient goes to bed, there is no drug release. After 4-5 hours there is immediate release of formulation. All the drug is released at once, and then the plasma profile is the plasma profile is maintained in such fashion. Now to prepare such formulation, what is the in vitro dissolution profile we require? The in vitro dissolution profile we require is like this. For first 4-5 hours, we should be able to control the drug release. After that, there is immediate release formulation of the drug released immediately, and this in vitro profile would reflect such in vivo formulation, such in vivo biological or pharmacological activity. These two slides have been kept specifically so that the students are able to understand
Then what is the importance of drug delivery system? The drug delivery system should be such that it should be able to have maximum patient compliance, as well as it should have the maximum bioavailable portion of the drug. What is bioavailability? I am sure everybody would be knowing bioavailability is. It is the rate and extent of the unchanged drug that reaches the site of action. So whenever we are giving the dosage form, as most probably by oral route, this is the fate of the dosage form. The tablet, it would first get disintegrated, or the dosage form, it would first get disintegrated into granules. Then from this, it could be any dosage form in that sense. Then from these granules or the smaller particles, the drug would start leaching out, the drug would start dissolving. Once the drug gets dissolved in solution form, then the drug would get permeate and would give absorption. So what does this say? There are two basic rate limiting steps for the pharmacological activity of the drug. First is the dissolution of the drug, and next is the absorption of the drug. The dissolution of the drug would depend upon its solubility. The absorption of the drug would depend upon its permeability. This leads us to this solubility. This is one simple experiment which I always discuss with my students. I would request the moderator as well as all the students that whatever the questions they want to ask, and they are free to ask during the presentation itself. We would carry out a simple experiment just to establish what is solubility. Let us assume we would be taking three different beakers. One beaker has, all these three beakers has equal volume of water. One beaker is having sodium chloride cubes, one beaker is having sodium chloride crystals, and another beaker is having sodium chloride fine powder. Now all this, let me make it very clear, all this would be having the same solubility. The solubility extent would be the same. However, the sodium chloride cubes, because they are having a larger particle size, a larger size, which leads to a smaller surface area, they would be having a lesser rate of dissolution as compared to fine powder, which would be having a higher rate of dissolution. But in no case, the change in particle size from these cubes to some fine powder in micrometers, it is going to improve the solubility. So the drug should be having sufficient solubility and it should be having sufficient permeability. Permeability, again, it depends upon so many characteristics. We are not going to discuss this, but for a drug to have suitable, what Lipinski has suggested, Lipinski rule of 5, for a drug to be suitably permeable, it should have at least certain part of lipophilic substance and certain part of hydrophilic substance. And the lipophilic is more soluble as compared to hydrophilic. Lipinski rule of 5, Lipinski, premier scientist in one of the pharma companies, what he suggested, Lipinski rule of 5, it is a very good rule. We are not going to discuss that rule here, but what he said based on this rule, that most of the drugs which are synthesized, I am talking of small molecules, we are not talking of biological molecules, most of the small molecules synthesized are having more than 40%, not most of, more than 40% of the small molecules will be having poor aqueous solubility, and once the drug is not soluble, there is no chance of becoming permeable. This leads us to this biopharmaceutical classification system, and now after this we are going to start with nanotechnology. This is important because this nanotechnology, this biopharmaceutical classification system guides which formulation we are going to prepare, or what are the challenges that we are going to prepare. This is class 1 drug having high solubility and high permeability. This is class 2 drug having low solubility and high permeability. This is class 3 drug having high solubility but low permeability, and this is class 4 drugs low solubility, low permeability. All these 4 classes of drugs are suitable candidates for preparing nanoparticles. If you want to prepare controlled formulation of this class 1 drug, nanoparticles would be important. If you want to prepare formulation for class 2 drugs, again nanoparticles would be important. Why this classification is shown? Because every time when we are going to select a dosage form based upon our drug, this classification is going to be helpful to us. So then what is nanotechnology? the US FDA still it does not completely define what is nanotechnology as such. However, in the guidance document in 2014 and then subsequent 2016, what they have said is that considering whether an FDA regulated product involves the application of nanotechnology is identified by two criteria. And what are those two criteria? First is whether an engineered material or end product has at least one dimension in the nanoscale range, that is approximately 1 to 100 nanometers. So that is if any of the material is of 1 to 100 nanometer range, or whether an engineered material or end product exhibit properties of phenomena including the physical or chemical properties or biological effects that are attributed to its dimension. That is, when we are changing that dimension, the property changes. We would be discussing one example based on this as well. That when we are changing the dimension, its property changes. Just a couple of minutes back, what we saw that when we are converting the drug, or when we are size reducing the drug, it does not show improvement in solubility. But in subsequent slides, we are going to see certain equations wherein decreasing the size would improve solubility as well. So it is corresponding to this phenomena, this logic, that physical, chemical, or biological phenomena is attributed to its size, and if we go to nano range, then it would change. So based on this, how does nano help? The nanoparticles have altered physical and chemical properties. During the early years of nanotechnology, for example, in early 70s or end of 60s, 1960s to 70s, when liposomes and all those nanoparticles were just emerging, it was seen that these nanoparticles or polymeric nanoparticles or nanocrystals or in general nanomedicine, they have different physical and chemical properties compared to their macro sizes. One of the classical term is EPR. It has enhanced penetration and retention in the cancer cells inside the body, and therefore 70 to 80% of the nanoparticles, especially the polymeric nanoparticles, they would be oriented towards treatment of cancer. It has altered pharmacokinetic responses. We are going to discuss this in detail as well. It has altered bioavailability. It has increased product life. It has increased product life because it is going to decrease the competition. What is competition? The faculty would be knowing all this all process. But whenever we are preparing, and due to this pandemic, I was referring to some social media, and I just came across one thought that in this pandemic, now every person has some knowledge that how a drug is being synthesized or how a vaccine is being prepared, how it is marketed, how it is regulated, etc., etc. So in general, if we are preparing something very, very innovative, obviously it is going to decrease the competition. And so if we are, for example, if we are preparing vaccines, and if other people are not able to prepare, other companies are not able to prepare vaccines, obviously we are going to have increased market share as compared to other people, and therefore there is decreasing competition. So not just research work, there is one term in marketing of this pharma companies, value of death. What is value of death? Value of death is we are giving resources to the formulation. We are investing so much that it is as good as killing our resources. But once the product gets into the market, it is going to come out with huge returns, and that is the motivation that would drive these pharma companies to go for research work, to go for such research which would benefit the people as well as would help them earn more resources, earn more money. Nanomedicine, again, it is an umbrella. This nanomedicine is an umbrella. For example, we know liposomes are of nano size. We know nanocrystals of nano size. Nanocrystals have their own name. Liposomes have their own name. Polymer nanoparticles have their own name. Magnetic nanoparticles have their own name. But then also, all these formulations are clubbed under nanomedicine, so that we could discuss them together. And this is the classification available everywhere else as well. Then we would just first see this all this. This is nanocrystals. Then we have polymeric nanoparticles, and then we have liposomes. You may be able to see these nanocrystals. They are crystalline particles which we are able to produce in different methods. We are going to discuss this in more detail shortly after this classification. Their prime advantage is there is improvement in resolution of the drugs and improvement in saturation solubility of the drugs. They are applicable by all the routes, by oral route, by topical route, by pulmonary route, etc. etc. Then polymeric nanoparticles. These polymeric nanoparticles, they can be prepared as nanospheres or nanocapsules, or in general term as nanoparticles. Again, they can be prepared by nanoprecipitation, by emulsification methods. And they can be also administered by the same routes as nanocrystals. However, with the help of polymeric nanoparticles, we are able to have gene delivery as well. The liposomes, at present, if you could, there is a widespread, widespread mucormycosis after this COVID infection, and the drug which is used for the treatment of mucormycosis is liposomal amphotericin B. Liposomal amphotericin B, Sun Pharma was the premier institute from India who had launched this liposomal amphotericin B way back. Thereafter, it has been launched by Sun Pharma from quite a long time. These liposomes, they consist of lipids, phospholipids in specific, phospholipids concentrically arranged. We are going to discuss this as well in detail. And they are able to have active as well as passive targeting of the drugs. They are able to load different kinds of drugs with very high drug loading, and therefore they are also able to reduce the toxicity. And we may be able to deliver enzymes, hormones, antisense nucleotides, ribozymes, etc. in this liposome system. Just to question a bit, I am sure I am allowed to, the vernacular language, I excuse the moderators as well. I pardon.
Yes, sir.
I vernacular language just to just slow down the momentum, and the students
No
are able
problem,
to
sir.
slow down. Students are able to understand. I would take an example in vernacular language. એકવાર એક ભાઈ છે ને, હું એના માટે હું કહું છું કે છોકરાઓ થોડા ફ્રેશ થઈ જાય અને પાછું એમને ભણવામાં થોડુંક મન બનાવેલું છે. બાકી તે વાત કરે જઈશ તો ઇટ ઇઝ ડિફિકલ્ટ ફોર એવરીબડી ટુ એબ્ઝોર્બ થિંગ્સ. એકવાર એક ભાઈ નવા ગામમાં જતા હતા, સ્ટેશને ઉતર્યા અને ઘોડાગાડી જોઈ એમને. એમને જે જગ્યાએ જવું તો એમને પૂછ્યું ઘોડાગાડીવાળાને, તમે મને અહીંયા લઈ જશો? એમ હા, તો હું લઈ જઈશ. તો કે બેસી જાઓ. એ ભાઈ બેસી ગયા. થોડોક આગળ જાય ઘોડો, અને પેલો ઘોડાગાડી વાળો નીચે ઉતરી નાચવા લાગે. પછી પાછો આસુ બેસે આવીને ચાલવા લાગે. પેલા ભાઈને થોડુંક નવાઈ લાગી કે આ ગામમાં આવું કંઈક હશે કદાચ. પછી થોડોક આગળ જાય અને પાછો પેલો ઘોડાગાડી વાળો નાચવા લાગે નીચે ઉતરીને ઘોડા સામે. બહુ 3-4 વાર થઈ. પછી પેલા ભાઈને ક્યુરિયોસિટી થઈ કે આવું કેમ થાય છે, તમે કેમ આવી રીતે ઘડી ઘડી નીચે ઉતરીને નાચો છો, પછી પાછા બેસીને ચલાવવા લાગો છો. At that time, ઘોડાગાડીવાળા એવું કીધું કે સાહેબ આ છે આ ઘોડી લગનની ઘોડી છે. લગનની ઘોડી છે ને, તો તમે જ્યાં સુધી નાચો ને ત્યાં સુધી આગળ ના વધે. ફોર ઓલ ધ ફેકલ્ટીઝ, જ્યાં સુધી આપણને સ્ટુડન્ટ તરફથી પોકારો ના મળે, ત્યાં સમજાય છે ત્યાં સુધી આગળ ના વધી શકે. બટ સિન્સ ધીસ ઇઝ ઓનલાઈન પ્રેઝન્ટેશન, આઈ એક્સપેક્ટ કે સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ much પડતી જશે. Then we would be seeing these magnetic nanoparticles, micelles and dendrimers. These magnetic nanoparticles, as you can see, we are during the formulation itself, we are adding certain substance which we would be able to relocate with the help of external stimuli. And these external magnetic fields would help us to localize the magnetic nanoparticles. It is accumulated at desired site, and it can also be used as a contrast agent. Missiles were first coined around 1970s. Polymeric, these are missile concentration. We are using surfactants to deliver the drug. We are able to have a very high loading capacity. Then dendrimers again, they are very much in the nanomedicine part. They are synthetic free-shift molecules. It allows cross-jet entrapment properties, and because of this monodispersed structure, we would be able to estimate, we would be able to prepare a specific size of nanoparticles. The size is, we are able to tune it very easily and very correctly as well. They have good stability in the blood circulation, and it is used to carry some very insoluble water insoluble drugs such as paclitaxel. But we are not going to discuss all these things. These 9 different terms of nanotechnology we are keeping here because if anybody wants to do some review work or wants to think on certain dosage form for certain field, then we could have some idea. This webinar could provide some idea. Carbon nanotubes, as you can see from the figure, they are needle-like carriers which can easily diffuse into the cell membranes. It has very high cell membrane permeability and high aspect ratio, allowing high drug loading. Then gold nanoparticles, these gold nanoparticles we are using around 150 years, not in nanomedicine but different cases as well. And quantum dots is also there. It is a semiconductor crystals with nearly spherical structure. These gold nanoparticles in quantum dots, they are under inorganic nanoparticles. Having said all of these things, we would now move on to nanocrystals. Nanocrystals, as the name suggests, they are colloidal dispersion of nano-sized drug particles stabilized by surfactants. It has some distinctive features over conventional approach. We will first discuss that. It obviates the need to dissolve the drug. Why it obviates the need to dissolve the drug, we are going to discuss in the next slide. That because of its nano-sized, it would be having a higher saturation solubility, and therefore we need not to dissolve the drug. There is no need of excessive force solvents. It easily tackles the formulation of hydrophobic drugs, and it has high drug loading, which would result in increased bioavailability and reduced fat and phosphate variation. All of this, if we would just understand the solubility and the permeability part for poorly soluble drug, then all these 5 points they are in tune with each other. We would just take a simple example. When the students would be doing their further studies, especially become semester 8, there in their project work, or if they are doing masters in that, they would see then there are certain drugs which are having sufficient solubility that they would not fall into BCS class 2 or class 4 drug. They could be considered in BCS class 1 or in between BCS class 1 and BCS class 2 drugs. One of the prime example is glaviclamide or glavuride or glimepiride, etc., etc. The sulfonylurea class of drugs, they are having certain solubility, which would allow their proper, solubility and absorption from the body, and would not allow it to be considered as BCS class 2 drugs. But then also the pharmacopoeia suggests that they should be micronized in nature. Some of the researchers have prepared nanoparticles of such drugs. Why? Because if we are improving the solubility of this drug, then it would reduce the fat phosphate variation. And what is this fat phosphate variation? You would have seen so many times that the medicines for anti-diabetic drugs have to be taken before meal. Why before meal? Because then there are chances that if it is taken with meal, then RNase absorption might result because of its RNase solubility. One of the probable reasons is this. and therefore it has to be taken on empty stomach. But for some potent medicines such as sulfonylurea class of drugs, especially third generation and further drugs, if we are not able to have meal after food, if you are not able to have the meal after taking the medicine, what would happen? It would result in severe hypoglycemia. So here comes in these nanocrystals, which might improve patient compliance. These nanocrystals can be taken with meal, and even if it is taken with meal, it could be having sufficient solubility, and therefore it could reduce the fat cascade variation. It could also increase the availability. This is the classic example which I have taken. This figure I have taken from the publication from International Journal of Pharmaceutics. It says that from macroparticle, when we move towards nanoparticle, there is increase in the area up to 5,000 times. There is change in the area up to 5,000 times. Now, whenever the Gibbs free energy delta G is equal to gamma delta S, whenever gamma delta S into A, whenever it says that whenever there is increase in the particle size, so decrease in the particle size, increase in the surface area, it is going to have a system which is of very high energy. The system would try to come back to its original state. That is, it would again come back, the particles would get aggregated, and we have to prevent this aggregation while we are preparing nanocrystals. This is the Kelvin equation. This Kelvin equation, I am not going to discuss the mechanics of this equation, but what does this Kelvin equation do? Kelvin equation discusses this PR is the pressure generated by that particle of radius r, and this P infinity is the pressure generated by that particle which is having infinite radius. What does this say? When the curvature of the particle is very, very high, that is, when the area is high, the curvature would be high, it generates enormous dissolution pressure. Because of this enormous dissolution pressure, according to the Ostwald-Fredlich equation, it would have improvement in solubility. If you would see the definition of solubility according to the IUPAC guidelines, what does it say? It says that solubility is defined as the chemical equilibrium between the dissolved and the undissolved solutes. It's simple. Chemical equilibrium between the dissolved and the undissolved solute is called solubility. However, so that means the solubility does not take into account its particle size. But what does these two equations say? These two equations says that if we are preparing nanoparticles, if we are preparing nano-sized particles, then it may improve the solubility as well, because of which is governed by these two equations. So what does this then? It says that we are able to improve the saturation solubility, and once the saturation solubility improves, we are also able to improve the dissolution velocity by, as per the Noyes-Wright equation, we are also able to improve the dissolution velocity. So what these three equations say? These three equations says that for poorly soluble drugs, if we are able to improve the solubility and velocity, then we are able to formulate these drugs. Sanjay ji, the question was how we would be able to formulate such drugs. The question was not that these drugs are pharmacologically active or not active. They are pharmacologically active, but we were not able to prepare suitable formulations. But now we are able to prepare this nanocrystalline product. For example, one of the first nanocrystalline products in the market was of sirolimus. It is an immunosuppressant drug having extremely poor solubility, but then also through LN technology, nanocrystalline sirolimus was marketed. We would quickly for the so the students are able to have some idea that how we could select the formulation. We would quickly go through this. When can nanocrystals help? The first is we are arranging the drugs as per their polarity. So if you are able to prepare a salt of that drug, that means that the drug is soluble in some solvent. And if you are able to prepare a salt, then just by pH adjustment for water soluble drugs, we are able to improve the solubility. And once we are able to improve the solubility, there are chances that the drug might show good pharmacological property as well. But if the drug is not water soluble, then what we have to do is we have to find out the log P value. Log P value, as we all of us know, it is the ratio of lipophilicity to the octanol to water coefficient, lipophilicity to hydrophilicity. If the log P value is low, then we could use co-solvents. In market, if we could just look a bit, then there are paracetamol solutions available for children. These paracetamol solutions use co-solvents, ethanol as a co-solvent to improve the solubility of paracetamol. But if the log P value is high, then we have to look at the melting point, and if the melting point is also high, then we have to look at the dose. I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when log P value is high, then you have to look at the melting point, and after the melting point, if the melting point is also high, then we are looking at the dose. If the dose is high, then we are going to prepare inclusion complexes for those drugs which we can formulate inclusion complexes with cytoreduction molecules. But if the molecular shape is not suitable, then we are going for nanocrystals. So for those drugs which are having very high log P value, which are not water soluble, which are not having suitable shape, then we are able to formulate nanocrystals. These drugs are called as brick dust candidates. Brick dust candidates means soluble na. They are known as brick dust candidates. However, if the melting point is low and the dose is also low, then we could go for other lipidic systems such as self-nanoemulsifying systems, self-microemulsifying systems, lipidic nanoparticles, etc. This has been adapted from a very well-known article by scientist Darren Rabino, which was published in Nature 2004. Various methods of production are there for nanocrystals. We would divide these methods into two basic parts: top-down production and bottom-up production. Top-down production, as the name suggests, this top-down production, we would start with microparticles and come down to nanoparticles. And bottom-up production is we would start from the solution state and then we would go up to nanometers. From solution, we would start going to nanometer. That is called as bottom-up production. In top-down production, we have different methods. In bottom-up, we have different methods. One of the best methods available is high-pressure homogenization. This high-pressure homogenization uses cavitation forces to break the particles. I am not going into the details of this. To break the particles, and this cavitation forces would break microparticles to nanoparticles. This works at a very high pressure, around 20,000 psi. Just to have an idea, the atmospheric pressure is 14.7 pounds per square inch. The machine operates at 15,000 psi or 20,000 psi. The product from this is having a homogeneous distribution. The particles are almost of same size. Then we could also prepare by solvent emulsification and evaporation method. We would first prepare an emulsion, then would allow this emulsion to precipitate out. It is called as nanoprecipitation. This method, we are able to prepare these nanoparticles at laboratory scale as well. The disadvantage with this method is that the drug should be soluble in at least one of the solvent. We would add another anti-solvent and the drug would precipitate. Advantage is that it is we are able to prepare this with the nanoparticles and stabilize them and evaluate them at laboratory level. Then this is again, if we are having a supercritical system at our institute, then we are able to prepare this nanoparticles by supercritical fluid technology as well. It is very simple. We would first take carbon dioxide as a system, as a vehicle. This carbon dioxide is converted to supercritical system, and due to this, it is having very high solubility for the drug. This carbon dioxide is then allowed to release at room temperature at normal standard temperature and pressure, and because of this, the drug would precipitate out. But the formulation is such that it would produce nanoparticles. It is called as rapid expansion of supercritical solution. We are not getting into details of all of these things. The idea was that the student should be aware that these methods are available. Then again, media milling is there. We are able to prepare these nanocrystals or nanosuspensions by media milling, this pearl milling, wherein we are using very small beads. Small beads, with small beads, the size of these beads is around 0.1 mm. So just imagine what is 0.1 mm. We would keep the drug, the solvent, the surfactants, the polymers in that system, and would mill it in the vial for some time, for some days at laboratory level, and we are able to prepare nanosuspensions. At larger scale, there are mills available as shown in the figure, which would prepare nanosuspensions. And then we can also use microemulsion or emulsion as standard. You would first prepare microemulsion, and this microemulsion is diluted with the external phase. Once it is diluted, the surfactants, they would lose their micelle concentration and would precipitate out. But the concentration is enough to maintain nano size. And therefore, and once then this excess of solvents are then removed by dialysis, and we are able to have nanoparticles. Having said all of these things, whenever we are preparing nanocrystals, there are certain things which have to be evaluated very critically. As the formulation, it has to be evaluated for all the formulation parameters, irrespective of this. But for nanocrystals, we are using, we have to evaluate at least this much parameters. So first is particle size distribution. Whenever we are preparing nanoparticles or nanocrystals in general, we have sufficient time, still 20 minutes. Whenever we are preparing nanocrystals, the size has to be very uniform. Otherwise, what would happen? For all those particles which are having different sizes, let us assume we are preparing nanosuspensions or nanocrystals to suspend it in a system, and there are certain particles which are very small in size, there are certain particles which are bit greater in size. What would happen? These smaller particles, due to their very small size, would dissolve in the system. But since the drug is having sufficient solubility, further dissolving of the drug would reprecipitate the drug, would recrystallize the drug. The drug would recrystallize from the system, it would come out from the system, would be thrown out from the system. But it gets thrown out on the surface of larger particles. So if the size is not uniform, the smaller particles would dissolve, and from nanocrystals it would get converted to microcrystals. This is called as Ostwald-Reinach. So particle size distribution has to be uniform. Normally the particle size distribution is estimated by laser diffractometric studies. Zeta potential, again, it is a very important parameter. Zeta potential is the difference in the energy from the electroneutral region to the surface of the particle. Ideally, zeta potential beyond plus or minus 30 millivolts, 30 plus or minus 30 millivolts would suggest that the system is stable. If it is between plus or minus 20 millivolts, then we have to add certain agents, or we have to convert into a stable system. Or we could lyophilize the suspension and look into the stability. The dissolution velocity and saturation solubility, again, for all the students who might be working this in their future, to understand the solubility of a substance, bare minimum is that it has to be studied in orbital shaker for at least 72 hours, at least. During this, when I was preparing this presentation, I came across one paper wherein the scientists had studied the solubility of cubes and nanoparticles for 6 months, and they concluded that after 6 months, the cubes and the nanoparticles are having the same solubility. After 6 months, they had studied this for 6 months, but at laboratory scale, for students who are going to do their research work in masters or in B.Com semester 8, the saturation solubility has to be studied for at least 72 hours at physiological temperature. If we are able to improve saturation solubility, then we are able to improve dissolution velocity. How we are going to find out the dissolution velocity? We could find out the dissolution at certain time intervals. From this, we are able to calculate the percentage dissolution efficiency and the mean drug dissolved, and we are able to find out the dissolution velocity. Crystalline status is again very, very important while we are preparing nanoparticles. nanoparticles or nanocrystals. There are other methods for improving the solubility of the drug. For example, we could convert the crystalline drug into amorphous drug, as in solid dispersions, and we are able to improve the solubility. So while we are preparing nanocrystals, it is at most essential, at most important that we study the crystalline state of the drug. What we have to do is, while we are initiating our studies, we would first find out the particle size and the crystalline state by DSC studies and XRD studies. And then after we would formulate our nanoparticles, we would again study the particle size and the crystalline state. If there is decrease in particle size and the crystalline state is as it is, then we can say that nanocrystals have improved the solubility or dissolution. But if the crystalline state gets converted to amorphous state, or there is decrease in crystallinity, then we need to study it further. Applications, various applications are there. Ocular drug delivery, pulmonary drug delivery, oral drug delivery, transdermal and intravenous. We would briefly look at all these applications. Oral drug delivery, these nanoparticles, when they would come into contact with epithelial cells, direct entry without permeating is not possible for nanoparticles. If we are preparing it up to 100 nanometers, less than 100 nanometers, there are chances they would directly permeate, or else we could bind them to various molecules. As you can see in this picture, this green color and orange color are clathrine molecules, clathrine substrates. These clathrine substrates allow the nanoparticles to pass through this blood barrier, membrane barrier. We are not discussing this in more detail because this is advanced application. We are not discussing. This is intravenous delivery of nanoparticles. Herein also, we are able to target it like this. If we are preparing nanoparticles of very small size, one thing which we should be very, very clear is that whenever we are giving anything intravenously, 99.99% of the time it has to be in solution form. Otherwise, it would cause embolism. But in case it is, we are not able to prepare solution, it is essential that we have to give it in particular form, then it has to be very, very small size, so that it does not cause any embolism. For example, if the drug is of less than 100 nanometer size, then what would happen? As soon as these nanoparticles or nanocrystals comes into the contact with systemic circulation, comes into contact with the bloodstream, they would instantly dissolve. But if we are able to prepare nanoparticles of size greater than 100 nanometers and lesser than 500 nanometers, what would happen? Until the time it takes to get dissolved, they would be identified by the macrophage system and they would be engulfed by this macrophage system. And once they get engulfed, with the help of these nanoparticles, we are able to now target the macrophage system. I hope it is, just leishmaniasis is one such disease in which we are able to use this technology. And topical drug delivery, these nanocrystals, they would improve the solubility. Because of this, they are also going to improve the concentration gradient and they are going to improve the activity in the skin. We are not topical drug delivery and transdermal drug delivery, they are different terms. Topical drug delivery, we are not expecting that it is going to cross the skin barrier and get into the systemic circulation. For example, if we are preparing clarithromycin nanoparticles for treatment of acne, these clarithromycin nanoparticles might have suitable or better function or better pharmacological activity as compared to clarithromycin simple gel. These are some of the advantages of or applications of nanoparticles. There are some marketed formulations. Some of the marketed formulations are there. We will be discussing this first two. This rapamycin. It consists of sirolimus. It is an anti. It decreases the immune system. It is immunosuppressive agent. Sirolimus is having very, very poor water solubility, and therefore, with the help of this nanocrystal technology by Allen Nanosystems, by Wyeth Corporation, I could recall it correctly, rapamycin nanocrystals were prepared, which should improve pharmacological activity. Aprepitant, it consists of antiemetic drug. This antiemetic drug normally during chemotherapy, it has high MSCs, and to reduce this MSCs, this aplipitant is given. This aplipitant is again given very poor aqueous solubility. But these drugs, it shows very poor aqueous solubility, and therefore they have been formulated as nanocrystals. Having said all of these things for nanocrystals, these nanocrystals have no polymer attached to that. If we are able to attach a polymer to this, then we are able to prepare polymeric nanoparticles. Again, this polymeric nanoparticles is a very, very huge topic which could be beyond the scope to discuss at present. Conclusions: these nanocrystals and suspensions, this all we have discussed, they would be able to improve the bioavailability, would be able to improve the bioavailability of poorly soluble drugs. They are also able to increase the saturation, solubility, and dissolution velocity. Fine. Next is liposomes. Why we have taken liposomes? Again, these liposomes have certain properties which are advantageous or distinct over nanoparticles. By definition, they are microscopic vesicles composed of one or more several lipidic membranes surrounding by discrete aqueous compartment. It could be one compartment, it could be one circle, it could be more than one circle as well. If it is more than one circle, it is multilamellar. If it is one circle, it is unilamellar. This you would have studied elsewhere as well. Formulation: it consists of natural phospholipids, synthetic phospholipids, sphingolipids, glycosphingolipids, steroids, polymeric materials, and charge-inducing substances. Now, what are natural phospholipids? The glycerol containing phospholipids, they are commonly used as natural phospholipids. These phospholipids are the basic components or the basic structure for preparing liposomes. Liposomes, as we discussed earlier, amphotericin B, the molecule is market available, liposomal formulations, and has CY, one of the first marketed formulation of liposome, doxorubicin liposomes, which was used in the treatment of ovarian cancers, is also well known. આપણે આગળ જોઈશું market formulations સ્ટાર્ટમાં છે ના. Then next is synthetic phospholipids. Here we have two types of phospholipids: saturated or unsaturated. Saturated phospholipids consist of dipalmitoyl phosphatidylcholine or phosphatidylserine. Are unsaturated, it is diolane phosphatidylglycerol. Then sphingolipids. These sphingolipids, they have three building blocks: a molecule of fatty acid, a molecule of sphingosine, and a simple to very complex alcohol groups. They are used to stabilize this liposomes or to have that sufficient backbone. Then we also have glycosphingolipids. These glycosphingolipids, again, they are complex oligosaccharides with one or more sialic acid residues. Then we have steroids. Normally, what in terms of steroids, what we use is cholesterol. In the formulation of liposomes, this cholesterol increases the microviscosity of the liposomes. It decreases the permeability of liposomes for water-soluble drugs. It also stabilizes the liposomes. At times, we also use charged substance in this formulation. Why charged substance are used? So that liposomes get some charge and it would improve the permeability of liposomes. Preparation method, we would very quickly look at the preparation methods. There are two types of preparation methods: active loading and passive loading. In passive loading, we have mechanical dispersion method as well as we have solvent dispersion method. Mechanical dispersion method, we would be discussing it because we are able to prepare liposomes by this method at laboratory level as well. The simplest method is handshaking method. What we do is, in this is, we would first take some lipid, dissolve the lipid in some organic solvent, and then this organic solvent is removed under certain conditions so that it forms a thin film. This thin film is then hydrated to form liposomal dispersion. It is very simple method, and we are the liposomes by and large they are formed by these methods. However, one of the disadvantages with this method is that the liposome form could be having different sizes and different shapes, which need to be uniform, which need to be made uniform. They can be made uniform by sonication method. Bath sonicated or probe sonicated. Normally, what we do is we go for probe sonication method. this probe sonation would this probe in probe sonation, a probe sonator would constantly vibrate continuously at a certain frequency, and this would convert all the differently sized liposomes into uniformly sized liposomes. Then we have French pressure cell. This French pressure cell would force, the piston would force the liposome to pass through a certain membrane and would convert all these liposomes to uniform sized liposomes. In solvent dispersion methods, we have ethanol injections and ether injections. Briefly discussing why we are discussing all these methods is because there are chances that student might, if they want to do some research work on this, then they should have some idea. This ethanol injection, ether injection, it's simple. We are dissolving this lipids in this ethanol or ether, and in the such system they are allowed to pass through certain membranes at certain temperature, and they would form liposomes. Characterization, or apart from all these characterization methods, we have to characterize for their size and lamellarity. That is for vesicle shape and vesicle shape and vesicle size. This is small unilamellar vesicle. The size is 20 to 100 nanometers, which is nanoliposomes. But the same liposomes could also have multilamellar large vesicle with size from 1 to 5 micrometers. And in between this, there are various characterizations. We are not discussing at that, but it is essential. It is essential that we should characterize this. What is the need for characterization? If we are not characterizing this, then it is going to affect the subsequent formulation and its stability. How we would characterize this? In simple terms, the size we could see by scanning electron microscopy, but for vesicle lamellarity means kitna circle shape. For vesicle lamellarity, we have to go for Friis fracture electron microscopy or for by transmission electron microscopy. Then we have surface charge. Surface charge is also important because if we know that semi-permeable membranes inside the body are negatively charged. So if we are able to prepare liposomes which are positively charged, then these liposomes we would be having improved permeation. So at times, depending upon the requirements, we could be having a positively charged or negatively charged liposomes, but we have to characterize it for that. Now, marketed formulation, probably we would be concluding after a couple of slides. I hope I am on track. We still have 3 minutes. Yes, we still have 3 minutes. We will be concluding it. And Doxil is a marketed formulation of liposomes. We could see here it has hydrated PEG groups. These polyethylene glycols, they are added onto the surface of liposomes. The polyethylene glycol molecules are added onto the surface of liposomes. Because of this, the body feels that PEG is a molecule which is not that much harmful to the body, and it allows undetected. The body does not detect this as harmful molecules and prolongs the circulation of liposome inside the body, and therefore they are also called as stealth liposomes. However, in one of the lectures which I was listening to Padma Devarajan, one of the renowned scientists at UDCT, ICT that is now, what she said, this polyethylene glycol molecule as such, they are having no side effects, but when they are converted to nano PEG, they might result in fluffy palms. This PEG get accumulated in palms and would result in fluffy palms. So one thing which we should see is the toxicity profile, the ethics of this the nano size is also has to be considered, but at laboratory level, at research level, that is at college level, we have to keep that in mind. But that does not mean that we should not work on that. Then there are certain marketed formulations, doxorubicin, Doxil, which we already discussed. Then Ambizome, that is liposomal amphotericin B. Then Depocyte, again an anti-cancer drug, cytarabine. Then we have Markibo, the anti-cancer drug vincristine. Then Onivide, that is irinotecan, anti-cancer drug. And then we have Donoxone, which is anti-cancer drug Donorubicin. All these are marketed formulation of liposomes, which should suggest that your liposomes or nanomedicine. It is by one research or by one extrapolation, it is expected that the nanomedicine market would reach up to $350 billion by end of 2025. It suggests a huge scope for its market. Just to conclude, in July 2019, three Nobel Prize were given in chemistry. I am not going into the details of what those three prizes were there, what those three inventions were there, but all those three Nobel Prize winners, which they had for which they were given the Nobel Prize, all these three told in that conference that these three would be useful in drug delivery applications, which sums up the importance of nanomedicine. And takeaways is discussed already. Briefly, we have some of the publications which our group have published over the years in nanoparticles. I thought that I would be discussing a couple of these. This was one publication which we had done in vivo studies of nanoparticles, and we were able to conclude that pulmonary delivery of levofloxacin has the drug has higher biodistribution in the lungs as compared to other bodies, other parts, other organs. Then various research papers in various journals were able to publish for polymeric nanoparticles or by nanocrystals. With this, I am also thankful to all my students over the years who have supported me for publishing, who have supported me in my research journey. I cannot take names of all the students who have worked with me over the years. I think so. This is it. These are some of a very brief bibliographic material which I had referred for this presentation. These are just 4, but these 4 should be sufficient if somebody wants to learn about nanoparticles. This is my college. All of you are most welcome to visit the college. It was the only government college till now. Now there are 2 other different government colleges. We are so proud that we have BPharm course, master's course, as well as there are some full-time PhD students working over there. The college houses some advanced instruments, as well as with very meager fees of just 1,500 rupees for boys, 700 rupees for girls. We are able to provide education to the students. It also gives me immense pleasure that every time we are in the NIRF ranking between 1 to 100, and it was the first pharmacy college that was approved by NBA in the new course, the new NBA program, which was after 2017. It was the first college that was approved by NBA. With this, I conclude my presentation. I would request the moderators and the students to ask any questions if they have any doubts. And once again, thank you to all the people involved here, the moderator, the principal madam, for giving her precious time, and the management of the university, as well as the Institute of Pharmacy and the Faculty of Pharmacy, for inviting me to share my views on this presentation.
Thank you, sir. So we have opened the question answer session.
And this is my email
I have a
ID.
question.
This is my email ID. If anybody would like to mail me afterwards, then also. I had just taken 5 minutes extra. Sorry for that. I tried to finish within 1 hour. That's fine.
Okay, sir. No problem, sir. Any student have a question?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Sir, I wanted to ask, what are the disadvantages of nanoparticles?
The disadvantages of nanoparticles, it would depend upon what type of nanoparticles you are preparing. Just for example, one of the examples which we discussed was of nano PEG, stealth liposomes. This nano PEG might accumulate in palms, and it would give fluffy palms. This disadvantages, I mean, it could be More precisely, it would be beneficial if we would be talking about specific dosage forms for disadvantages. Otherwise, the normal disadvantages are there with other dosage forms. They are also there. One prime disadvantage with other nanoparticles, if they are not biodegradable, is that if they are using polymers which are not biodegradable, then over the period of time they would get deposited inside the body, which could again cause chronic problems if the therapy is chronic.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. If anyone?
Sir, can I ask one question?
You're most welcome, ma'am.
Yes. Sir, when we are prepared the nanoparticles of herbal drugs, so I have heard that some cancerous products or some cancerous end products are there while there is preparation of nanoparticles. So when we are synthesize the nanoparticles containing the herbal drugs, can you have some idea regarding that, so we can minimize the production of cancerous products?
So this is thank you, madam, for your question. I really appreciate what you have said. Is so many people have the same question. In the starting itself, while we were discussing the in the starting itself, while we were discussing the drug delivery system, that we should be first very much sure that why we have to prepare these herbal nanoparticles. Uh, While we are preparing this herbal nanoparticle, is it something that these nanoparticles are causing the toxicity, cancerous toxicity, or is it that because we are preparing these nanoparticles, the process which we are using to prepare these nanoparticles is doing something which causes toxicity? If these herbal nanoparticles are causing toxicity, cancerous toxicity, then so we cannot prepare those. But I don't think so it would be that case. The case is during the process itself, uh, it might be producing some excipient or some byproducts which might be cancerous in nature. And that we have to identify at that level. But more important is what is the prime requirement for preparing those herbal nanoparticles? Do we want to prolong the circulation time? Do we want to target those herbal products somewhere? Because normally, it is easy to work with curcumin, specific what is a specific chemical excipient, chemical substance, instead of working with the whole curcuma longa powder, because it is difficult to characterize the whole curcuma longa powder. But if we are able to work on just same excipient, then it will be beneficial. One more thing, having said all these things, and if I could just take a couple of minutes, the tug work going on between Ayurveda and IMA, what the general difference is, in Ayurveda we would treat the disease as a whole. It is not symptomatic treatment. And while all these drugs are as good as symptomatic treatments, if you have temperature, take this. If you have if your body ache, take this. If you have tuberculosis, take this, etc., etc. So this, I mean, they could go hand in hand together. However, coming back to the original question, we need to find out from where the cancerous, or what you say, carcinogenic impurities are coming. If it is from herbal, we should work over there. If it is from process, we should work over there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
For
Thank
your,
you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
okay, anyone left? Okay, no question, sir. Thank you, sir. Give your valuable time. Okay.
It is always my pleasure.
Okay, sir has actually officially guided 23 students, but actually it's more than including me. Okay. Sir, I'm presenting you the certificate on behalf of School of Pharmacy.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. So we are concluding and ending our session webinar series. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Lalit Leta Jha, madam, Anand sir, all the faculty member, and the student who joined, and also thanks to Q webinar, Bija Acharya sir. Okay, thanks to all.
Okay.
Okay, and I have shared the feedback link. Those who have joined, I have shared the feedback link. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Fine. You are most welcome. Anybody of you who wish to visit the college, you are most welcome anytime. You will contact me
Yes, sir.
whenever you are there. And thank you. May I leave now?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir. We are left.